Listen to me. You're not lazy. You're not broken. You're not unmotivated. You're exhausted from carrying a life that isn't yours. Now, let me tell you the truth most people never hear. I don't believe you wake up wanting to waste your life. I don't believe you want to feel numb, distracted, or stuck in that fog where days blur together. What I see, what I feel, is someone who has been trying to survive while pretending everything is fine. And that kind of pretending, it drains the soul. Here's what's really happening. You've been disconnected from meaning. And when meaning disappears, motivation doesn't die dramatically. It fades quietly. You stop trusting your own desires. You stop listening to your inner voice. You start living on autopilot, doing what's expected, not what's aligned. You feel lost because you were taught to abandon yourself to belong. You feel lazy because your body is protesting a life that feels empty. You feel unmotivated because your heart no longer believes the effort is worth the cost. This isn't a character flaw. It's a signal that you've been running on approval instead of purpose. A signal that you've been measuring your worth by productivity instead of presence. A signal that you've been performing instead of living. And when you live like that long enough, your spirit goes quiet, not because it's weak, but because it's tired of not being heard. This is not the end of you. This is the moment your body and soul are asking for honesty. And honesty changes everything. Let me say something gently, but clearly. The reason you can't move forward is not a lack of discipline. It's shame. Shame is the voice that whispers what's wrong with you. It's the weight in your chest when you compare your life to others and come up short. It's that quiet belief that if people really saw you, your fears, your confusion, your doubts, they'd turn away. And shame is exhausting. When you wake up already feeling behind, already feeling like a disappointment, your nervous system goes into protection mode. You don't chase dreams when you're busy defending your worth. You don't feel motivated when you're bracing for judgment. You shut down, you scroll, you procrastinate. You call it laziness, but it's actually self-protection. Shame tells you that rest means failure. Shame tells you that struggling means weakness. Shame tells you that asking for help means you're not enough. So you carry everything alone. You keep saying, I should be doing more. But the truth is, you're already doing too much emotionally. You're managing expectations. You're swallowing disappointment. You're editing yourself to be acceptable. And all of that invisible labor steals your energy before the day even begins. Here's the hard truth: motivation cannot survive in a shame-based environment. It withers. It hides. It waits for safety. And until you replace what's wrong with me with what happened to me, nothing changes. Because healing doesn't start with pushing harder. It starts with compassion. When shame loosens its grip, energy returns. When self-blame softens, clarity follows. And when you stop treating yourself like a problem to be fixed, you finally create space to move forward. This is not about becoming better. This is about becoming kinder to yourself. Let me tell you something most people never learn. When you numb your pain, you also numb your joy. You don't feel motivated because you don't feel much of anything anymore. Not deeply, not honestly. You've learned how to stay functional, how to show up, how to perform, how to keep moving, but you've lost touch with what you actually feel inside your body. And that disconnection comes at a cost. Somewhere along the way, you were taught that emotions were inconvenient, too much, weak, dramatic. So you pushed them down. You stayed busy. You distracted yourself. You told yourself you'd deal with it later. But emotions don't disappear just because we ignore them. They go underground, and from there they drain you. Unfelt grief becomes heaviness. Unexpressed anger becomes exhaustion. Ignored fear becomes paralysis. So now, when it's time to take action, your body resists, not because it's lazy, but because it's overwhelmed. Your nervous system is carrying years of emotions that never got processed. And motivation can't flow through a system that's locked in survival mode. Here's the truth: clarity doesn't come from thinking harder. It comes from feeling safer. And you don't feel safe feeling your feelings yet. You've been strong for too long. You've been holding it together for everyone else, and strength without release turns into numbness. This is why you feel stuck. This is why inspiration feels distant. This is why even small tasks feel heavy. But the moment you allow yourself to name what hurts, without judgment, without fixing, it starts to move. Energy returns when emotions are allowed to complete their cycle. You don't need more motivation. You need permission to feel. And when you reconnect with your emotional truth, you reconnect with your life force. Let me be honest with you. You're not unmotivated. You're overwhelmed. You're carrying invisible deadlines, unspoken expectations, and a constant sense that you're running out of time. Even when nothing is happening, your body feels like it's late for something. That's not laziness. That's chronic pressure. You've been taught that your value comes from achievement, from progress, from proving that your life is moving somewhere meaningful. So you push, you rush, you compare. And when you fall behind, even slightly, you don't rest, you criticize yourself, and pressure doesn't inspire action. It suffocates it. Under constant pressure, your nervous system stays on high alert. Creativity shuts down. Curiosity disappears. Motivation becomes fear-driven. You don't move toward what you want. You move away from shame, failure, and judgment. That's why you feel stuck in cycles. Big goals feel paralyzing. Small tasks feel exhausting. You want to move forward, but your body is bracing for impact. Here's the truth no one tells you. Sustainable motivation only grows in environments that feel safe. And safety doesn't mean comfort. It means permission to be human. Pressure tells you you can't slow down. Your body says, I can't keep up. So you freeze, you procrastinate, you escape into distractions, not because you don't care, but because your system is overloaded. You don't need more pressure. You need more margin, more breathing room, more compassion for the pace of your healing. When pressure eases, clarity returns. When urgency softens, purpose becomes visible. And when you stop chasing worth through achievement, you finally have the energy to move with intention. Let me say this slowly. It's hard to feel motivated when you don't trust yourself anymore. Every time you made a promise to yourself and didn't keep it, every time you started something and stopped, every time you ignored your own needs to please someone else, a small fracture formed. Not dramatic, not obvious, but cumulative. And now, when you think about taking action, there's a quiet voice inside you that says, what's the point? You won't follow through anyway. That voice doesn't come from laziness. It comes from disappointment, from broken agreements with yourself. So you hesitate, you delay, you wait for the right moment. But what you're really waiting for is self-trust to return. Here's the painful part. Motivation is built on credibility. And credibility starts with tiny, boring, unglamorous acts of self-honesty. You don't need big goals right now. Big goals feel threatening when self-trust is low. You need small promises you can keep, ones that rebuild safety inside your own body. Because when you don't trust yourself, even freedom feels scary, choice feels heavy, responsibility feels like risk. So you stay stuck, not because you lack ambition, but because you're afraid of disappointing yourself again. But here, this self-trust is not restored through perfection. It's restored through repair. You say, I messed up. You don't abandon yourself. You try again, gently. Every time you choose honesty over avoidance, you repair the bond. Every time you show up imperfectly, you rebuild faith. And when trust returns, motivation doesn't need to be forced. It rises naturally because now effort feels safe again. Let me tell you something uncomfortable. The version of you that once worked no longer fits. But you keep trying to squeeze yourself back into it. You measure yourself by who you used to be, more productive, more driven, more certain. And every time you fall short of that outdated standard, you call it failure. But growth often looks like disorientation before it looks like clarity. You're not regressing. You're shedding. Your values have changed. Your tolerance for meaningless hustle has dropped. Your nervous system no longer cooperates with lives built on urgency and external validation. And instead of honoring that evolution, you shame yourself for it. You say, why can't I be like I was before? But the real question is, why am I asking an old identity to solve a new life, this in between space, where the old self has fallen apart and the new one hasn't fully emerged, is deeply uncomfortable. There's no map, no applause, no clear next step. And in that uncertainty, motivation feels elusive, because motivation depends on identity. You act in alignment with who you believe you are. And right now, that belief is fractured. Here's the truth. Transitions feel like failure to people who don't understand transformation. You are not lazy. You are recalibrating. You are learning what no longer matters. And until you give yourself permission to grieve the old version of you, you'll keep trying to resurrect a life that no longer feels true. Let the old metrics go. Let the outdated expectations burn. Make space for a self that values depth over speed. Because once you stop forcing yourself to be who you were, energy returns, this time rooted in authenticity. Let me tell you something that doesn't get talked about enough. Humans don't shut down from doing too much. They shut down from doing things that don't matter. You can work nonstop and still feel empty. You can stay busy and still feel lost. Because business without meaning slowly erodes the soul. You're not lacking motivation, you're lacking connection to why. You wake up, go through motions, complete tasks, and still feel like something essential is missing. That's not a personal failure. That's an existential signal. At some point, your life became about survival, approval, or stability, and those things are important, but they're not enough to sustain a sense of aliveness. Meaning is what turns effort into energy. Without it, even small tasks feel pointless. You ask yourself, what's the point? And you're afraid of that question because you don't have an answer yet. But here's the truth. Feeling lost is not the absence of direction. It's the presence of deeper longing. A longing for authenticity, for contribution, for a life that reflects who you are now, not who you were taught to be. Meaning doesn't arrive as a lightning bolt. It emerges through curiosity, values, and courage, through small choices that feel aligned, even when they're scary. And until meaning re-enters your life, motivation will remain shallow. You can't fake purpose. Your body knows the difference. This numbness you feel, it's not emptiness, it's a hunger. And hunger is not a weakness, it's an invitation. Here's the truth that hits hard. You already have everything you need to step forward. You think you're waiting for the perfect plan, the perfect time, or the perfect mindset, but that's a lie your mind tells you to stay safe. You're waiting for permission from someone, something, or some external standard, when in reality, permission only comes from inside. You hesitate because the stakes feel enormous. The unknown terrifies you. The risk of failing, or worse, being judged, is paralyzing. So you freeze, you tell yourself, I'll start tomorrow, I'll wait until I'm ready. But readiness is a mirage. Confidence is built through action, not contemplation. Motivation is born in the messy middle of trying, failing, adjusting, and trying again. You've been trained to defer, to ask others first, to seek validation, to shrink yourself until you feel acceptable. But every time you do, you chip away at your own power. Every time you wait for someone else to greenlight your life, you hand over pieces of your soul. Here's the truth: you don't need permission. You need courage. Courage to honor your own desires. Courage to take steps even when fear is present. Courage to choose yourself before anyone else chooses for you. Because when you finally stop waiting, you awaken energy that's been dormant for years. You awaken clarity. You awaken your voice. And you awaken a version of yourself who moves with intention rather than hesitation. Stop asking for permission. Start claiming your life. Let me tell you something. Most people never realize motivation isn't something you find. It's something you create. And you create it by protecting the one resource you've been giving away to freely, your energy. Every distraction, every obligation, every relationship that drains you without return, it's a silent thief. And over time, it steals your clarity, your drive, your sense of self. You think you're lazy. You think you're stuck. You think you're unmotivated. But really, your energy has been misallocated, and now your body is saying, enough. Reclaiming energy is not about doing more. It's about doing less, but doing what truly matters. It's about saying no without guilt, about choosing rest without shame, about creating boundaries that protect your nervous system, about letting go of anything that doesn't fuel your purpose. When you honor your energy, something magical happens. Motivation flows naturally. Inspiration no longer feels forced. Your body and mind are aligned. And the lazy days, they become fertile ground for reflection, creativity, and renewal. The problem isn't that you don't have what it takes. The problem is that your energy has been scattered across a life that isn't yours. It's time to take it back. It's time to stop giving pieces of yourself to anything or anyone that doesn't nourish your soul. Because when you reclaim your energy, motivation stops being a struggle. It becomes a byproduct of living intentionally. Your next step doesn't need to be perfect. It just needs to be yours. This is the truth I want you to feel deep in your bones. You are not lost. You are not lazy. You are not broken. What you are is human, confused, overwhelmed, exhausted by expectations that aren't yours, starving for meaning in a world that celebrates motion over presence. And that is okay. That is normal. That is exactly where transformation begins. Every moment you've spent feeling unmotivated has been preparing you for this awakening. The moment you decide to stop blaming yourself, stop waiting for permission, and start reclaiming your energy, your identity, and your life, the way forward isn't through brute force, it's through alignment, through reconnecting with your emotions, through honoring your values, through small, imperfect actions that build trust with yourself, through courage, even when fear is loud. When you embrace your truth, motivation is no longer a chase. It becomes a natural current carrying you toward a life that feels alive, meaningful, and entirely yours. So here's the invitation. Feel what you've been avoiding. Let go of what no longer serves you. Trust yourself enough to take one step today. Because every step, no matter how small, signals to your soul you are worthy. You are capable. You are allowed to live fully. And when you finally do, you will remember motivation was never missing. It was waiting for you to claim your life. This is your moment. Step into it.